Everybody, and thank you very much. We've got a full room today, and I'm sure there's lots of people about to watch on YouTube. It's the Communities in Place Overview and Scrutiny Committee on Wednesday, 27th of September. And we've got quite a packed programme today. So we'll try and get through it as quickly as we can. Mindful, I think there's a storm heading our way, isn't there? First of all, Nicola, are there any apologies for absence?
I've received apologies for absence from councillors Hassel and Lamb.
Okay, thank you. And then item 2 on the agenda are the minutes on pages 1 to 8 of the 26th of July meeting. Does anybody have any questions? I think, yeah.
No questions about, no comments about accuracy, but 3 questions about progress with things mentioned in this.
Okay.
Yes. One is whether we or Councillor Carty has had an update on the live website cycle corridor. The other was whether there's been progress made on scheduling the things that we discussed at the last scrutiny meeting. That's things like the open spaces review and the local nature recovery strategy. And the third question was, has there been any progress made on the environment task and finish group on its terms of reference?
Okay, so the second one, could we leave until we get to the work programme? It would be sensible to do it then. Perhaps you can raise it again, in case I forget. And
the environment task and finish group, that was raised by the leaders as a possible group for this committee to establish, and they decided that actually it was needed, so you've been that request.
was there one other?
Yeah, it was an update on the live to website cycle corridor, which I think Councillor Carty requested.
Yeah. Is anybody aware whether that, presumably you haven't had that, Eileen?
I haven't.
No, okay.
Well,
Would we chase that? Yeah, we can chase that. Brilliant. Good stuff. Brian.
Thank you, Chair. It's just on the opening paragraph where it is an answer to a question the leader stated there were, and everybody's got something. So it was just generally, the last sentence on there is, members who wish to discuss areas such as pest control, what would need to be highlighted during consultation. It's a point that I want to make, that we don't set the budgets, this council will set the budgets. We can highlight our concerns. But once again, when things like this happen, it's a consultation of any subject that comes to committee or comes through council, and we would like to be kept up to date on. And a couple of other questions, I think Nick has kind of covered it, but on page 3, it's a maintenance programme along the cycle routes. And this has been a big concern to me because it's been brought up around by local acts. We've been told that they're done, but in theory that they're not. And there was a question from myself around the trees. Are there any updates around the trimming of tree branches around street lighting? I'm not getting any feedback on that. So thank you, Chair.
Okay. So they're quite, I mean, the general point about budget consultation, yeah, I understand that there is a consultation. Obviously, the consultation doesn't guarantee that everything you like gets included in the budget, but nevertheless, there is a process, and we all get the opportunity to sort of have our say, even if at the end of the day, that say gets all ignored, but we do get the opportunity. So I think I would just advise you be as vociferous as you can and make your point as well as you can, and then they'll consider whether or not they can include particular schemes or projects within the budget. In terms of the general maintenance issues about the cycle routes, the trees and the street lighting, I'm not detecting, I mean, they're quite specific and they're area based. So I think what you ought to do, if I can just be so bold as to suggest this, is that you send a list to the officer and to the portfolio holder of the issues that you feel are not being addressed. Give them an opportunity to respond to that, and then if there becomes a wide problem about, sometimes you may not get the response you want, but at least you should get a response. And then if there's a wider problem, we can consider it on a sort of county-wide basis as an issue for scrutiny. I mean, I'm sure every member in all 67 wards across the county has issues with people that either want trees chopping down or not chopping down or whatever. And we discussed the tree, the sort of maintenance plan and the policies around that at a fairly recent meeting. But you're never going to be able to keep everybody happy on trees in particular. Cycle routes obviously do need to be maintained in the same way as that roads do. And street lighting is a fairly simple process. You know, if a street light goes out, it should be reported and it should be fixed. If that's not happening, and you can demonstrate a pattern, then obviously it's something that we'll pick up as a scrutiny committee. But if you could sort of start the process by giving the officers a list, then we'll come back to that.
Just to come back, Madam Chair, I have started that process.
Great.
The conversations that we've had in LAC
Yeah.
over the last few months, and probably the beginning of this year. There are two different subjects, by the way. The pruning or controlling of trees is different to cycle tracks.
Yes.
These things have been raised before, and members of the public now are complaining. So I've been down on site visits and even they haven't been maintained.
Yes.
So the reality is that's why I thought it was extremely.
Yeah, I understand that. I mean, trees in particular, there's a new policy in place.
Yeah.
And, you know, the council should be adhering to that policy.
Fix my street.
Yeah.
That's what we report on, fix my street.
Yeah, but if there's nothing wrong with the tree, nothing happens. It's sort of, that's often the problem. But that's perfectly understandable. So anyway, thank you for that, Brian. Any other issues with the minutes or questions around the minutes? And if not, could we have a proposer and seconder for their accuracy? No, proposed by Jeff and seconded by Ivan. Thank you.
That agree by all?
Agreed?
So,
Thank you. Item 3 is disclosure of members' interest. Does anybody have any interest they'd like to disclose? Yep. Item 4 is the forward plan of cabinet decisions. This is here for information. Sean, I don't know if there's any comment you want to make, or if anybody has any questions about this, please raise them now.
No, just the new former chair, nothing to add, there can be changes into the.
Okay, then Nick has a question. Thanks, Sean.
Thank you. Just one question. The Food, Feed, Safety and Standards Service Plan is being presented for endorsement in October. This is the plan for 23-24. Why is it being presented for endorsement halfway through the year?
Good question. I don't know. Does anybody have an answer to that? No. Could we make a note to get a written answer circulated to the committee?
Yeah, I mean, it's a cabinet report, so like.
Yeah, good point. Thank you. Okay. So that's item 4. Item 5, we've got, so this is portfolio holder presentations. I think this is the 3rd meeting which we've had these portfolio holder presentations. They are for our information and they're designed to guide the scrutiny process going forward. So these items are not being brought to scrutiny now. What we're doing is getting a bit of a heads up on what the council and officers and members are working on is in the year ahead, so that we can, as a committee, can consider that and decide whether or not we want to bring any of these things either to pre-scrutiny, to post-scrutiny, you know, or whatever. So the officers are going to, or members and officers are going to present. I think they're going to be fairly sort of kind of headline presentations, not into the detail. We've all had the detail in the written report. We'll take that as read. But then there's an opportunity after each sort of short presentation for members to ask questions, and then we can have a bit of a general discussion about whether we might want to add things to the scrutiny programme going forward. So I will start by inviting the portfolio holder on the first report, who is Councillor Stewart, to start the ball rolling. And if you could introduce the officers, then am I right?
No.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I'll start by introducing Councillor Watson to
That's me.
to do a brief presentation, and Jeff, if you could introduce the officers that are presenting on your behalf, that would be great. Thank you very
Right, I
much.
will do a little introduction first, and then I'll pass on. First of all, I'm delighted to be able to share with you all today what we are doing across this very widespread portfolio. I think the main thing I would try to impress on you is that we're looking at this whole portfolio differently than we have in the past. It's all really about mixing together our health and well-being, getting things which were being separate before are so interlocked now that we're trying to get them all balanced and working well together. For example, you wouldn't think a library was sort of linked with a leisure centre, but it is. And in many cases, we have them in the same building and they work well together. So the whole ethos of this community's in the county council is changing, and you'll see this and you'll read that in the report, which I hope you have. So it's very much not business as usual at the moment. We are doing so many different things. I picked out about half a dozen very quick sort of one-liners that you can think about. The first thing is in our leisure services, where the offer that we're giving, we're looking at it being much more about well-being. It's been much more about reducing inactivity and making more and more of our residents involved in the leisure centres, which will affect their health and well-being. We're looking at some of our community assets to say, would they be better handled and managed by local communities rather than by NCC? And that's going on very, very well. And we're getting some really good feedback from the places that we're dealing with on that. The third one is about our museums. Huge changes happening up in the barracks at Berwick. In that English Heritage are converting half of the barracks to residential, and the other half they're changing it and moving things around. We have the archives who are having a brand new building there eventually, which is really, really a big change for us. The play zones that we're doing, we're getting 3D pictures. You'll read about that. You'll see that's happening throughout the county. Our libraries, we're looking at testing mobile libraries at the moment. And if you recall, I've made a promise some time ago that we wouldn't close any libraries, and we haven't closed any libraries. And I almost defy you to mention to me another council where they haven't closed libraries over the last few years. And actually, you could say exactly the same about the leisure centres, couldn't you? Because everywhere else is closing leisure centres. We're developing them. Berwick Culture Zone, that's going to be a very interesting thing when it's all done as well. We've got this link between the Maltings and the barracks, the new theatre, and all sorts of things that are happening up there. So there are really, really lots happening in this area. And I'm really proud of the staff who are working on it. And if you've read those reports, I think you'll see how much activity and how much is being put into doing this. I mean, a great example, I think, can be taken from our libraries. This year in the libraries, we have a thing called the Summer Reading Challenge, where kids are encouraged to read a certain number of books over the summer holidays so that they don't stop reading little ones. We have 2,400 kids, and these are just like 4 and 5-year-olds. So it's a very big proportion of those taking part in this challenge. And it's been an absolute delight to go out there and give them their little medals and their certificates and say, well done, and actually thank the parents as well as the kids, because that's who will make it happen. That gives you just a little bit of taster. I'm going to pass on to Nigel, who will introduce the stuff in the order that he wants to do. But Nigel is really just going to do the same sort of thing. He's just going to go over the top because it's all there. Over to you, Nigel.
Thank you, Councillor Watson, members. Yes, I'm Nigel Walsh, I'm Director, recently appointed Director of Stronger Communities, joined here today by Linda Bankier, Senior Archivist from Berwick, and by Diane Wright, one of the Senior Librarians. I'd apologize from Karen Lambton, who was quite key to pulling this information together. She's on annual leave. So as Jeff said, the portfolio that Jeff looks at now, in terms of what he said around this strong move towards the link between leisure and health, is one of our major drivers, but of course, with that major focus on inequalities. And it's really already starting to see the benefits of the restructure, the realignment we've gone through. So now we have public health, stronger communities, and inequalities directorate. So the face-to-face aspects of the council around customer experience, communities together, and the customer services around libraries and archives are all under that one directorate now. So, and that is absolutely sitting very closely alongside the public health team, which can inform strongly on policy, and they're also have that strong link to health initiatives and improving health and wellbeing. So I feel we're in a very strong situation. Jess outlined a number of the key developments around libraries. We've had quite close contact with members around the library service in the past. You've been on that journey with us around the service redesign around 2018, 2019, following the consultation, where we embarked on basically a three-phase strategy. There'd been an amount of churn in the service and no changes. So it was very much about stabilising those core resources. It was then about establishing 5 hubs, and now it's in this third phase about extending reach and partnership. So we're now going to refresh our library strategy because there's new government guidance coming out next year where we'll actually look at that. Something on libraries as well, which you've seen in here, which I'm very keen that scrutiny would be involved in. We're looking to put together what I'm calling an area prospectus. So that for each locality area, there's actually essentially a delivery plan where resources are matched with need across each of the localities, and they'll cover the key aspects around reading, information, health, and culture. So those key aspects of like, and digital of course as well. So we're looking so we can actually have a bespoke program for each locality area. That's something that we're working on. I've asked for that by Christmas. That's something Scrutiny may want to be involved in. As Jeff mentioned, we're currently trialling a new genre of mobile vehicles, a lot more agile, more flexible. So we've currently got a pilot scheme underway with that. And as Councillor Watson said as well, in terms of having our service under that one directorate, another significant piece of work is we're looking at blending of services. So how can the council's priorities be more effectively achieved through, say, closer collaboration between customer-facing services such as customer services, libraries, tourist information, NCT, how we can start to blend that together so get maximum use of those assets and provide the best possible services we can. And these are obviously aligned with the best programme, particularly best services to customers. So I'm not going to say any much more than that. Jeff's obviously mentioned the leisure programme. It's an exciting time to the council. We're incredibly proud of the investment we're making in leisure. You've all seen in terms of that physical improvements to the leisure centres. And we're now really starting to enter a new paradigm where we're rethinking that relationship between health and leisure. And essentially, we're looking to, our goal is to maximise the impact of our investment in leisure around tackling inequalities. Okay, and as we know that a number of those inequalities are particularly complex, linked with interdependencies around social determinants. So it is quite an exciting time going forward. As I was going to say on leisure, again, we're proud of that investment, and we can certainly keep members close to progress on that realignment.
Perhaps just that Sarah looks after our culture because it's part of her generation. Perhaps you'd like to say a few words separately.
I will do. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you.
Sarah Macmillan, Director of Economic Development and Growth. I'll just say you've seen the slides, councillors, in terms of the visitor economy and culture. So just a few things to pull out from that. For me, you can see actually we're starting to see a recovery in terms of the visitor numbers back into the county. Not quite back up to pre-COVID levels, but actually what we're seeing, which is really good news, and the figures are there, from the latest figures we've got is that the spend is quite high and is higher than we've seen before. So actually we're getting people staying in the county and they're spending their money. So in terms of that economic impact, that's really strong. That's really good to see. There are a few things that are, I suppose, highlights to draw out for the committee in terms of the visitor economy. We found out earlier this year that Visit Northumberland has been designated as one of the first local visitor economy partnerships, LVEPs, as they're being known. This is a result of a national review on destination management organisations. I think it was recognised nationally that there was a bit of a patchwork of arrangements across the country about supporting the visitor economy. And so there was a review taken forward by government. And the outcome of that is a new set of organisations where they have designated 15 so far organisations to be those points where they will drive the visitor economy in certain locations. So great that Northumberland is one of the first 15 to be named that. And we'll be working with Visit Britain, Visit England on that, the support from those organisations on that. Bless you, Councillor.
It's the first time everyone's said that needs to go.
Oh dear, sorry.
The second area that's worth highlighting to the committee is the Destination Development Partnership. So this is together with Newcastle Gateshead Initiative and Visit County Durham. With Visit Northumberland, the three are part of the only pilot in the country. So we're very involved in the development of the review nationally. As a result of that, we've been asked in the North East to lead a development destination partnership. That is really around testing how we can best work together across those partners to support the visitor economy in all sorts of areas, from sustainability to skills to the infrastructure that's there. And there's some money attached to that, relatively small amount, 2.5 million to support that. And that'd be really important in terms of how those arrangements nationally might look in the future. That, of course, is consistent with our destination management plan. So the committee will know that the Visit Northumberland developed a destination management plan, which is a 10-year plan. That really sets out the vision and the actions to develop a sustainable visitor economy in the county over the next 10 years. And it might be that is something that the committee want to look at in more detail over the next few months as part of their work programme. I won't go into the detail of that, but you can see in the slides the sort of areas that the destination plan focuses on in terms of the priorities for the county. Again, I won't go into it in too much detail, but attached in the slides, or contained in the slides rather, are some of the activities that are underway. I suppose just to really exemplify some of the work we're doing as part of that support for businesses in terms of the visitor economy and some of the business development, so that the work that we do with businesses in the visitor economy to support them attract more visitors, different visitors to stay longer, to do things differently, maximising the assets we've got, like the dark skies, like our great sort of outdoors and activities that people can get involved in. So there's a lot going on around that. Just a few highlights in the slides. And then, Chair, just a couple of slides around culture within the Lead Members portfolio as well. Jess mentioned the developments happening in Berwick, and there's a lot of activity in Berwick at the moment. The maltings and the barracks, which has been mentioned. We have also been successful in securing Borderlands funding, and we saw through the opening of Adgetburn earlier this year the first Borderlands funded project in the county, and the Ladore and the Gardens, as well as key cultural and visitor attractions for the North East. We're also working on the Blythe Culture Hub as well, which is a really key and flagship project as part of the Energising Blythe programme. One of the things that's really important in terms of that hub is that we not only have the physical building of the culture hub in the centre of the town, but we build a programme around that so that the space is used by people, and culture will be key to how we do that. So there's a placemaking cultural programme which is being developed now to really bring that building alive and support the use of it and bring people into the town centre, which is really what we're trying to do through that whole Energise and Live programme, and using culture as a way to do that. The culture and creator zone in Berwick, as Jeff mentioned, is a pilot. It's one of the only areas in the country. We've learned lessons from it elsewhere in the country. I think London have done these, and maybe Manchester as well. We've got one in, we focus in Berwick because of the assets there in terms of the cultural sector and the and small businesses that work in that culture, in that sector as well. That's really around supporting those businesses and the infrastructure there and community developed projects within that sector to really help grow what that sector looks like in the town. Again, it's a pilot, so we'll see how this works, what those projects show us, and it might be something that we want to continue to fund and support as part of the new regional arrangements that have been developed through the new combined authority. But a really exciting project for Berwick to be involved in. And then Hadrian's Wall, clearly, we wouldn't want to talk about culture without recognising one of our significant assets in the county. What we've been able to do through the review of the culture programme earlier in the year and clarity on the investment of our culture investment programme is bring Hadrian's Wall into that and recognising as a World Heritage status its importance for the county. So that is now supported as part of the culture programme, and there have been events, as members will know about, and that is embedded in the cultural events programme in Northern Tyne, and there'll be Borderlands support as well. That is underway in terms of developing some of those projects along the wall to maximise that asset for the county. And I think that was all I was going to say on that, Chair. Don't think there's anything else from Jeff.
Do you want any comments from your officers or?
Absolutely. Diane or Linda, would like any comments particularly?
Anything you want to highlight? I'm sure there might be some questions anyway, but if there's anything you want to highlight,
If not, don't worry about it.
I think it's just worth saying, Sarah's mentioned various initiatives in Berwick, and just to show that that is cross, I'm involved in a number of those, but as the archive service.
Yeah.
So it is all that cooperation and people working together. So I think, we do illustrate that.
Yeah. Okay.
I think to probably members, I don't think will know. We sort of tell them what's going to happen with the mod store, the progression, and now the cinema and what have you. They might, I think, they'll find that very interesting.
Well, at the moment, you've got the Living Barracks project, which is linked to the Maltings project. And the Maltings will have to move out of their building while all the work's done, and that is partly being funded by Borderlands. So the DMod store, which is part of the which is in the barracks, is initially going to be used as a temporary cinema for the Maltings so that they can continue to work during their interim period. But once that finishes, the DMod store will be converted into a repository for the archives in Berwick as its long-term home, because we're in a temporary home at the moment and have been since 2015. So this is a way for us to end up with a permanent home. But the main thing is that these two projects are very much interlinked, so that at the moment we are doing work with Advance and with NCC, making sure that that we're not duplicating a lot of the work, so that the work that's being done on the fabric is then what we can use in the archives as well. So we're trying to do it in the best way that we can for value for money and sustainability.
Because the cinema needs a certain air quality control, air conditioning, which is what you need for the repository as well. So you can pay for it once instead of having to pay for it twice. So that's what we're doing.
Excellent. Thank you very much, everybody. That's been very, very interesting. So now we're going to have a bit of a quick discussion around any issues that have been sort of pulled out of that. So this is not, I've just sort of stressed, this is not an opportunity for scrutiny of those issues of all the things that have been raised, but it's just an opportunity to have a bit of a discussion about which of, any of those things that we might want to look at as a committee going forward. And I mean, I think and I'll sort of do a start at the 10. I mean, I think one of the issues one of the streams of work that we've heard about is the procurement of our leisure services. And there's a process. Normally there'd be an annual report by Active coming to this committee. That is going to happen I think in January. It may be at that point that we have a bit of a discussion around the results of that procurement process and hear from whoever's successful in that procurement about their plans for our wonderful leisure services. So would that be, I mean, that's something that we could probably organise a bit. So that's one. Does anybody have any other things? Brian?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it was really good to listen to that presentation, especially around the summer breaks, where you keep the continuity of the kids reading, which is good news. And what I wanted to know was, how do you link up with, say the schools and with the local members of those areas to support your scheme? The reason why I'm asking that question is that I have just paid approximately, I've bought in 30 iPads for a local school for touch screens to help with the education we're budgeting on at the moment. And I think that if we can tie all of them in together, what you're doing, what you and your team are doing, how you connect with the schools and how you connect with the local members of those areas.
The answer to that, Brian, is our libraries are so diverse. We've got great big libraries, we've got very small libraries, we've got libraries open 6 days a week, we've got libraries open 4 hours a week. The individual contacts with the school are really down to the staff in the individual libraries. And some libraries are very fortunate in that they're situated right next to a school and they have really tremendous relationships with them. Other ones are miles away. Other ones, this headmistress or the headmaster will want to cooperate and will send the kids into the libraries, and other ones don't want to know. So it's a real mixed bag. Exactly how we get the best way, I think, for local councils to be involved is actually to call into the libraries themselves and see what they're going to do. Because 34 libraries, I think we've got now, if I'm right, 30 odd. I think you'll find there's 34 different answers of how they deal with the schools.
Just to come back, and I think that is a drive from local members. I only speak for myself to help this project.
Yeah.
And with the education, with the small schemes money.
Yeah, I mean, we'll welcome it, absolutely welcome.
Yeah. We do all get regular newsletters from the library service, don't we? Which I certainly share on the sort of social media platforms in my ward, and make sure that everybody's aware of things going on in Corbridge Library or Hexham Library and so on. So yeah, good stuff. Great, Nigel.
Well, thank you for the question. I mean, there is some specific initiatives as well about how we maintain that momentum, how we do get particularly into communities or areas of the community particularly hard to reach. So Diane might be able to provide a little bit more, but we actually have the reading facilitators that actually target specific groups. And I believe they do actually go into schools as well, don't they, to support learning, both on the curriculum side and the reading for pleasure as well. But we certainly welcome any support in terms of spreading that advocacy from local members in terms of summer reading challenge. And also across Councillor Watson's directorate, you'll also see the coordination across the HAF programme as well, in terms of how we start to build that momentum, and also how sport development wraps around that in places like New Biggin to try and provide that compelling offer, that compelling engagement.
Thank you.
Chair, could I just ask one more question? It's around culture. How does your team link up with the Royal Museum? Because I've heard about Berwick and I've heard about Blythe, but what about Museum? It was probably one of the first drop off from the
Thanks, Councillor. We work really closely with the Museums of Dublin to manage that facility for us. So We have an elected member that's on the board of Museums Northumberland, and we work with them very closely in terms of how they operate Museums Northumberland and any opportunities that come along for external funding, so we can continue to enhance what we've got there. It's one of our key, if not the key sort of museum, especially for that area of the county operating and delivering for South East Northumberland is a real kind of asset for us. So work very closely with them.
And as I understand, there's also some financial support every year from the council.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They couldn't, we own the site.
Yeah.
And we make a big donation, and they couldn't exist without us.
Yeah, okay. So in terms of scrutiny, sorry, Councillor Anne.
Sorry, thank you very much. Thank you for your report. Can I just say I welcome everything and the way that you're hoping to develop everything. The main thing is obviously is to make it sustainable and to have the funds to make it sustainable. So it's building on from the bottom up.
Yeah.
And hopefully you'll get all the relevant people involved who want to engage, and maybe they'll make it sustainable with a bit of luck, I don't know. And can I just say, if I went back, history will say on things like tourism and the DMO and the development of the partnerships and everything else. And it's not a new thing, but government keeps on changing its mind about how to develop this and that and the other. And actually, I think we've said this over the years, that tourism isn't something that changes straight away. It's got to be grown, and also it shouldn't be changed. Tourism, the economy itself should change itself, and it shouldn't be directly because they're the ones actually who are providing it. But one of the things was just about the development of the management plan. Is just to ask in particular, obviously I know this area quite well, about Havens Walk. This is a UNESCO site, and you put it down as part of your culture for it. They do have, and I'm not sure if you actually now right, so they have to have a plan that has to go to UNESCO about the management plan for so many years. I can't remember how much it was, used a 25-year plan where everybody was, all the partners were involved. So I would quite like to know about what your input into that is, if any. But also on top of that, how within the plan will you bring on board all those who are involved in the development of tourism? Yeah, so there's lots and lots of private enterprises. I mean, you've got Peel that was on the Queen of the Board 80 years ago. There's a lot that was on. We used to have Havens Walk Tourism Partnership. Yeah. Goodness knows what. All these people. Can you just say how inclusive will the new plan be? Because it will be an area, and I think, it's when you get into a big county, it becomes diverse and people have different problems and different
I think there's
agendas.
probably two ways we can answer that. I think you can answer the bit of it, and I'll do the front bit. For example, I'm at where am I at? Vindelander on Friday at a meeting of the Roman Wall Committee led by Dave Jane Gibson, and it also has on that meeting all the councils along the wall, North Tyneside, South Tyneside, Newcastle, Cumbria, and we meet 3 or 4 times a year to discuss things. We work out through the plans. For example, we're going to be looking at next year for D-Day, lighting a beacon on the wall. So that's the sort of thing that we're doing. The commercial side, perhaps the thing that we could add more to.
So can I just ask you, Jeff, do they actually look after the management of the trail? Because that used to be done by Countryside, I think it's Countryside. I'm a committee.
Havens Walk Partnership, wasn't there?
Yes.
Yeah, it just.
So this is the partnership, yes.
Trail is against the tourism, I suspect,
Yes.
the 2 separate things.
The Havens Wall Partnership is chaired by the chap from, I can't remember his name, but he's from Carlisle, I believe, or Cumberland.
Right.
But we have our man John Scott, who was a Northumberland County Council employee works for that. And the other guy who's very active in it is Tyne and Weir Museums, Bill. Yes. Who's so very well represented.
We're in danger of actually getting into actual scrutiny here, but what I'd like to suggest, and if this is okay with you, is that these are 2 significant pieces of work: the destination management plan and the partnership, the destination development partnership. can I suggest that we roll those two together in, and bring them as a piece of work to this committee? And it's just, and if Sean could liaise with you about when would be the best time to do that. So is it early enough in the process? If everything's already decided, I suggest we wait until we see how it gets implemented. But if it's still a process that's in development, perhaps we could bring it sooner rather than later, and then we might have a bit of an opportunity.
Because we've got the contract finishing at March, I think if we get it after that, or before, then like,
I think let's ask, when the refresh is going to be for DMP, and maybe before that, I think DVP probably can fit into any time.
It would be quite good to bring them
because
together.
both of these things are in Sarah's lap, and what I'm thinking about is I know we have a certain contract which is finishing in March next year, and I'm saying, should we do it before or after? Sarah's gonna have a look at it and come back and let you know.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. So that's two things that we've got. Can I just raise one more thing before I forget, and I'll bring you in next?
Sorry, can I get, yeah,
Sorry.
no, can I just go back? That was one thing. And the other thing with the, we've got a very good library because I'm part of the building the new library in Prague. This was going back, oh gosh, 2000, I can't remember now, 8, 9, 10. Anyway, the Prague Partnership goes into a brand new library, but it is owned actually by the partnership.
Yes.
However, the library service then, but we did bring all kinds of services in there. And over a period of time, they drifted away. There used to be a one-stop shop. And what I would like to see is that it becomes a one-stop shop again. And we used to have benefit bin, we used to have resident bins in, we used to have all kinds of things in there. But it is a really good, sustainable,
But that's,
so,
I mean, Prudhoe was a peculiar one because the police used to be there and the Carbon Homes used to be in there.
Yeah.
But what we're trying to do is exactly what we're trying to do that everywhere in a one-stop shop. So we can get the librarians to be able to answer simple questions from the public. Like, they can direct them to the Fix My Street, they can direct them to what to do with the land. And the bigger the library will probably have some tourism in them as well. It's where I started from. It's trying to get all this intermingled and blended in. And Prudhoe is going to be a good example of it.
Right.
He's always been back about Prudhoe anyway.
Nick?
Thanks. I'd like to ask for more information about the local area prospectuses, including how councillors can use them and support them and promote them. But I think that should probably go to the individual local area councils rather than to.
I think that would be a good thing to bring to local area councils. Actually, that would, yeah, I think probably, because otherwise we're just going to get into a slightly parochial discussion where we all want to talk about our own areas and, yeah, so maybe we could sort of, Sean, do you have any influence? You could, you know, something for that. Yeah, brilliant. I think that's a great idea. The other issue that we discussed in the pre-meeting and we raised, there was a presentation at the Corporate Services Scrutiny meeting on Monday, and that covered sort of tourism and about economic regeneration. And one of the issues we discussed was around broadband. And that relates very much to what we've been talking about today. In our pre-meeting, we had a bit of a discussion about doing a joint scrutiny meeting on broadband, because it affects all the tourism businesses. Having just stayed in a holiday let in South West Scotland last week, where the broadband was virtually non-existent, a bit of a nightmare. And we need to sort of make sure that Northumberland gets to peak broadband as quickly as possible. But also it affects individual communities and householders and things like that. So we're going to organise something on broadband. We may invite some of the providers, we may invite Openreach. It may simply be Northumberland working with the economic regen team. But that discussion is ongoing, so we'll sort of build that into the programme at some point in the hopefully not too distant future. So that's great. I think if we could now move on to the next presentation.
Sorry, Nick, can just give us 2 seconds of up and we'll leave. I want my to get back to you.
Oh, yeah. Yes, of course. Destination. Rolled in together. Thank you. Cheers, Jack. Thanks. It was children. Oh, leisure procurement. And the annual review, that, yes. Great, well, thank you very much. It's
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
a pleasure to introduce Councillor Gordon Stewart from Prado.
And elsewhere in the county. Very exciting times for my portfolio. We've got a new chief executive, as everybody knows too well. The chief executive hasn't got any previous experience of being involved with a local authority with a fire and rescue service. And she's really taken this on board, and we have regular discussions with her. New exec director for the portfolio and the new chief fire officer, and temporary roles have been brought in as well. Phil Silverquist, most people know, he's now retired for many years of dedicated service. His role's been divided up between Darren Wilson leading on public protection, and Susan Ogle taking on housing, which is in Councillor Horncastle's portfolio now. Recently, we've had a fire and rescue service inspection by His Majesty the King's Inspectorate. The results will be known in a few weeks. Thank you to those who have held the post in the past, but many staff have moved across portfolios in the reorganisation. As we've got so many new senior officers in post, this is a great opportunity now to look at improving the services which we'll be talking about today. Jeff did mention there about having a wide portfolio. I think mine is even wider than his. But with everybody in post, the common denominator between everybody I've got now is passion, enthusiasm, expertise, knowledge, and looking at the good for this county, being the people and the businesses here. Inadequacies and health across all portfolios, and that's at the forefront of my mind and the officer's mind throughout. So said, very exciting times for us here. I'm going to be a general overview, and you have seen the slides. First of all, we'll start talking about the registration service. Thank you, Chief. Yes, the next page there. I'll say Claire is sitting behind me now, and she's the interim ceremonial coordination team leader. Must have a huge door with a sign like that on there. So it's from the registrar's office. Thank you for coming today. This touches the lives of everybody in every family, because we're talking about from birth to marriage to bereavement. And weddings, which is your main role, it's attracting so many people to this county. It's bringing in jobs, it's bringing in income, and it's a feel-good factor throughout this whole county. So tourism sits well there. But I also mentioned about the registration service settled. I just found out how to pronounce it correctly. It is settled. Strange spelling of it there. And that is a fantastic new service the company's introduced, which deals with those everyday matters of services which people, when they've died, have left behind for other people to pick up. And this takes a lot of the problems away from those left behind. So I'm extremely proud of the staff, and I met with the registrars last week with Councillor Horncastle. So professional, and they are a credit to everyone in this county as far as the registrations. So I'm going to give you a few hints which help you, Chair, hopefully, as your committee is looking at what you should be looking at scrutinising your decision. But for me, I'm thinking we've got more people living in this county, more people want to come into this county to be married and bring up their families. The challenge I feel we're going to have is the workload, which is going to be on the staff here. They are professionals, and it's time consuming to deal with these. So possibly that's one area there. If you haven't seen it, can you have a look at the PR, which is going out for weddings in Northumberland as well? Some fantastic videos, and that is bringing a lot of extra people in here. The coroner's service we've touched upon there, appointed by the Crown, but working very closely with the police. Challenges are very similar. We've got more people in this county, more residents, more visitors. We've got a major hospital here, several major hospitals, including the Northumbria. We've got HMP, we've got arterial routes to A1, A69, A68 and A19. All those factors have an impact upon the work of the coroner's service, which isn't just about dealing with people on the time of the pass, as is indicated on. Thank you, Chief, for moving on that one there. The fire and rescue service. I'm going to ask the officers to touch on the slides which have been made available there. So we'll be talking about the fire and rescue service, but also about the directorates. So far as the challenge is concerned, again, exactly the same. There's more people here, but if you think about where our fire stations are located, and a lot of our fantastic staff are retained firefighters, we have problems with more cars on the road, more houses of various types in rural areas as well as in urban areas. Electric charging is high profile at the moment. So a new thing which is coming out, and it's been spoken about, I know the Chief Constable shares my view in relation to e-scooters, e-bikes. They are a danger on the roads, but also charging. There's an officer from Tyne and Wear Fire Service has been tasked nationally, and I met him online on Friday, and he's looking at the effects there. But basically, normal car fires, petrol and diesel, there's far more of those, and the more prevalent fires there than they are with electric cars. Climate change is something else which we are going to have to tackle. Wildfires, which we've been leading on under the previous chief nationally. We are exemplar in this whole country, and delighted that the acting deputy fire chief is taking on that role nationally as well. On a previous meeting here, we spoke about contamination, and I've seen in your minutes they acknowledged that the cabinet has acknowledged that there's work needs doing on that. And I'd say, from my point of view, and the fire service and the cabinet, our most important asset for the fire service and elsewhere are the people who work for us. So laying it out there, I'm now going to introduce Debs, Debs, can you just say what your title is, please? Because I've looked at it so long.
It is long. Thanks. It's Strategic Policy Risk and Performance Officer.
Right. And Mr. Binning, Graham, who's now congratulations on your appointment as the Chief Fire Officer in the Northumberland Fire and Rescue Team. Take through the slides again.
It's great. Thank you, Councillor Stewart, and thank you, members. First cabinet, first scrutiny committee that I've attended as your new Chief Fire Officer, something I'm enormously proud of. I came to Northumberland as the Deputy Chief 2 years and 10 months ago with a job to do, and we've been doing that, and our brilliant staff have been working very hard to deliver significant improvements. As Councillor Stewart alluded to there, we just had a hot debrief from our last His Majesty's inspection. We're on week 7 just now, so we're waiting for that imminently now, and we're waiting that with excitement, because we are relatively optimistic that it will reflect the journey that we believe that our staff deserve. From a scrutiny perspective, I was always minded that we attended scrutiny, and we were very well received at scrutiny, and not least when we brought the serious and very significant issue of contaminants and the safety of our firefighters, the County Council's own firefighters. What I was also aware of, though, was that we weren't coming back on the back of consulting on our community risk management plan.
our strategic plan, our manifesto of what I promised we would work on for a 4-year period. We didn't have systems in place to come back to tell you how we were doing, whether we were winning or not. So today I'm delighted to present to you the first ever annual performance report from Northumberland Fire and Rescue Service. I don't propose to go through it. I'm going to ask Deb to do a little touch point on a few key issues within it. But the idea being that 4-year plan we set in train in 2022, and I seek your support, Chair, in securing a slot round about this period in the democratic calendar going forward, and we get this chance to bring that annual performance report to you. And scanning through the report, I think it looks good. It's an interesting read. It's a good test for me as the new chief officer as to whether we're doing what we said we would do in a way that gives the elected members, the exec directors, the fire authority, and the community of Northumberland that assurance that we are actually delivering the service that they think they should be receiving. And if I raised your attention to any page as well, it would be page 61 within the report, because that is a page of things out with and over and above the commitments that we made within the community risk management plan, which demonstrate the scale, the scope, the depth and the energy that's gone into the work of our staff within Northumberland Fire and Rescue Service, your Fire and Rescue Service. So I'm going to pass to Deb just to quickly, we'll go back to the slides there, because I'm minded that the new scrutiny arrangement is to have a think about what next. And it may even be something we develop as an appendix to the actual annual performance report to encourage you to think this is what we're looking at next. But I do also bring you back to the actual community risk management plan itself, which is effectively a 4-year manifesto of what we will work on and what we will commit to. So that's the bullet point you have on the board there are considerations for, amongst many, what we will be focusing on in the next year. Yeah.
Thank you. You'll be delighted I won't be going through the report in detail. Sure. I thought it was worth maybe just highlighting a few bits and pieces for interest, if I may, Chair. So on page 50 of your pack, you'll see that we identify risks. It's a statutory responsibility that we have. And although the community risk management plan is 4 years, to enable us to understand what's happening on a more frequent basis, we develop and publish an incident profile. And so it just the profile for 22-23 tells us that over the last 10 years, the total number of incidents has increased by 25%. And that's a national trend, actually. That's not just relevant for Northumberland, but so it does reflect the national trend as well. I don't intend to go through all of the incident types, but I thought it was worth just referencing 2 that we are monitoring quite closely at the moment because of a slight increase. And you'll see those identified on page 51. So the first is affecting entry/exit. And that's something that we started to do back in 2017-18 to support North East Ambulance Service to affect entry when people are trapped inside rooms or homes. Often this is a result of a medical emergency, and we use our powers of entry to help them gain access. The numbers are increasing slightly, so we are monitoring that much more closely just to see how that unfolds, because that will enable us to understand our business and conversations that we need to have with our partners. The second incident type to bring to your attention is assist of agencies. So again, this would involve us responding to support other agencies such as ambulance or police. At the moment, the numbers are relatively low, but again have started to increase, so we are closely monitoring that at the moment. And just to explain that 51% of those incidents involve bariatric patients. I use that title and description specifically, it's a term that we use in terms of our incident profile. So I know that the terminology has moved on since chair, but that's a specific reference to our incident profile. So
Just saying what bariatric means.
so
Sorry.
these are patients who are of a considerable weight.
Okay.
So it might be that we need to assist in bringing those patients out of a home, help with the carrying. It may be that you need to come out windows because they can't go through the doors. That
Right,
kind of
okay, thank you.
So just so we understand our resource, etc., we are keeping that under review. So again, I'm not going to go into detail, but we do have 22 core measures, and they are around our statutory responsibilities. So we make sure that we monitor those. The detail comes to us as a management monthly, and it goes to a strategic board quarterly, and also to assurance and challenge panel. So it is regularly reviewed. Just to highlight response standard on page 55 of your pack. Slightly outside half that, I just wanted to assure you that our community risk management plan does have a priority to review the standards. It is a challenge for us in a county of our size to make sure that we do achieve standards, and we need to be really thinking about what those standards look like. We have started that piece of work. It's likely to be risk-based, but we need to understand what the impact would be before we implement anything. And we'll probably bring that work here if it's appropriate for you. Just on page 56 of your pack, in terms of future improvements, we'd like to look at response standards right the way through from the start to the finish. And what I mean by that is we'd like to look at response standards from the time the call is taken by our 999 operators, right the way through to when the fire appliance actually attends the incident. So we'll break it down section by section and understand the whole journey, as it were. But if I may just give you an example of how we're using this to inform our action and improve the work that we are doing. If I could reference core measure 17, that's emergency calls mobilised within standard. So we know that we're performing particularly well in terms of how quickly we answer a call, but actually last year only 64.98% of emergency calls were mobilised within the standard. We've really analysed that to understand what that means for us, and we've implemented some actions with individuals within fire control. And I can tell you already that by June of this year, that figure's increased to 78.63%. So I just wanted to let you know that we aren't just recording and analysing the information, we're doing something with it to make sure that we improve things going forward. And again, just something I think is useful, particularly when we're thinking about value for money. I know it's something that is captured within the corporate plan, and it's also one of our aims as a service. Well, page 59 of the plan talks about economic and social value of fire rescue services. So essentially, nationally, the sector's been working with a university to produce a formula that will allow us to understand what our value is to members of the public. Initial work has demonstrated that actually for something like our Safe and Wellbeing programme, which we implement to reduce accidental dwelling fires, is a value of 1 to 3. So for every pound spent, we actually achieve £3 worth of value to communities. That's been developed further to support our work alongside the Community Risk Management Plan, and Northumberland Fire Rescue Service have offered to pilot that work and have been accepted. So I think that's quite exciting going forward. In terms of just a high level overview, that was it really from me, other than that final page which Graham's already mentioned around other achievement. All we wanted to do in terms of this report was capture just some headline facts and figures around some of the other work that we're doing as a service to try and make improvements across the board. So the slide pack itself just refers to the priorities that we've captured in the Community Risk Management Plan, and we will continue to drive that going forward. wondering if there's any questions for her. Maybe a little bit of a rapid fire.
And just as a kind of summary to close, I set out my stall for the role of Chief Fire Officer with a vision of making Northumberland Fire and Rescue Service the most integrated fire and rescue service in the UK. The reason I came to Northumberland is the fact that we are a county council fire and rescue service, so the sum of our parts is so much greater, and the value of the contribution of a fire and rescue service can deliver so much beyond the cost of the actual service. So we're highly integrated now across the inequality strategy. I've been co-opted onto the Health and Wellbeing Board, working across inequalities and wider determinants of health. We're working closely within the Health and Wellbeing Board construct and the ICB around what falls means, falls and frailty, whether that be from a prevention point of view or a response point of view. And so we're very much embedded and integrated into where can our contribution sit and fit and add the most value as a treasured part of the county council offering. So thank you very much for your time, and we'll accept any questions.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you very much. I'll just make a sort of comment and then I'll invite Jack to ask the first question. I think obviously what we've had today is an overview of the services, including registrars and coroners, and if anybody has any sort of specific issues that they want to raise for future scrutiny, we'll have an opportunity in a minute. But we've also had the first sort of annual fire service report, which, for all intents and purposes, is a report for scrutiny. So, we'll have sort of questions on that if anybody has any questions. I'm assuming that everybody in this committee is happy to have that annually. I certainly am, and I'm sure Mark is an ex-reserve fireman will also definitely be very keen on that. But I'll just sort of assume that that's okay. We'll program that in once a year, and I think it'll be a really welcome report. Jeff, do you want to ask the first question?
Yeah, I always love this report. Fantastic. And it's always properly laid out, and it's full of information and statistics, which I really enjoy. But just going back to page 51, and this is how well I love this report. It's taken me ages to find some of the figures. So on the activity thing, you've got the icon for rescues and road traffic collisions mixed up, because there's a ladder where it says road traffic collisions and there's a crashed car where it says rescues. All right, so you know, and no matter what I do, I cannot get those figures to add up to 3,797. Whatever combination of false alarms, fires, special service calls, road traffic collisions and rescues, no matter which you add them up, you take one off or whatever, I cannot get that to add up to 3,000.
Can I have a guess at why? I reckon that some of these incidents cover more than one of these categories, and that's why it doesn't add up.
Yes, but actually, Chair, if there is some confusion, then that's something that we need to simplify going forward. That sort of thing.
No, that's a good point. And if there's such a thing as a fire service medal, I think Jeff deserves one for spotting at the elements.
But honestly, I just love all these figures and facts, and it just reinforces the fact that we do have an excellent fire and rescue service. You know, turn out great documents and save people's lives. So well done.
Yeah, thank you. Great. Anybody, any other questions?
I've got 3 suggestions for future scrutiny.
Yeah.
And I'd like to ask Councillor Stewart for clarification on one thing said as well. So I thought it might be good if we could ask the civil contingency team to come to scrutiny to tell us a bit more about certain things which are mentioned in this report, like the stronger local resilience forum pilot, possibly the COMA exercise they're doing. My other suggestion was that we should perhaps scrutinise the core measures in a bit more detail, and whether we're hitting targets, and when we aren't hitting targets, why not. And the third suggestion was that possibly we could have some more information about the results of the economic and social value toolkit. And maybe scrutinise the results, the output of the toolkit.
Absolutely fine, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Morgan, for that. I'll take the easy one, which is civil contingency, and absolutely delighted the service we provide here. Things are changing somewhat because of the LA7 coming out, and they will have play a greater role. The Deputy Prime Minister visited the Thornton Woods a little while ago. The day before that, he announced some changes in civil contingency whilst he was in Middlesbrough, which we're having to rewrite everything. But yes, absolutely right. It is so important. Yeah. The other two noted, and that's acceptable. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, and it's just a question of when we do that and what might be the best time. And I mean, Sean, could you sort of liaise on that? And
Unless there's an obvious answer.
unless it's obvious, that's it, yes.
So a couple of things there, Councillor Moffat. The stronger LRF pilot is being shaped up as one of 8 in the UK currently, with a view to that starting in January. So I think that would be very useful to come back and give you an update as to what that is looking and feeling like. As you know, civil contingencies now, as a very natural fit, are sitting under the Fire and Rescue Service Management. With regards to the core measures, I think it's useful from that page 61. The first thing we've talked about there was the introduction of an assurance and challenge panel. And that was really because I was challenging the Fire Authority and the Fire Authority Chair and Vice with regards to not being held accountable enough. So we've effectively created a midpoint scrutiny mechanism, which is chaired by Councillor Stewart. The Chief Executive sits there, the Shadow Fire Authority Chair sits there as well, with the senior management of Fire to be heavily scrutinised on a quarterly basis on the back of a strategic performance board. If you think over and above that, for us to bring, I don't know, a biannual update, if you felt that was of benefit.
I wonder whether a solution might be for that scrutiny committee that's scrutinising that, just to give us a brief report that is included with your next annual report, because if that's going to be in the midpoint of the year, and then you're coming back the following year, you could actually do a slide on the results of that scrutiny, rather than doing the same work twice. It would just be a report on, and then we get that sort of comfort from that other scrutiny committee.
Yes.
Yeah. Is that okay, Nick? Yeah.
Absolutely. And further reassurance, Chair, for me that myself and Councillor Horncastle meet either the chief or one of the senior officers on a weekly basis, and we do contact each other. So we get a full rundown on a Tuesday. So there's lots of interaction going on there. Yeah.
Great.
So perhaps the next report to this committee could include some information on the output of the economic and social value toolkit as well.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Yeah. Do you mind if I just ask for clarification?
Yes, of course.
As well. Thank you. You mentioned 2 forms of electronic transport that you thought were dangerous. The second was e-scooters, but I missed the first one.
So, right. What we're talking about, electric charging, just phones, is the modern way of doing it, but also electric scooters,
okay,
and electric bikes as well.
Yeah, I wonder if it was electric bikes you mentioned. I'm interested in why you think they're dangerous. I would consider them vulnerable rather than dangerous. Well, we could have this
Are you
conversation.
talking about charging in terms of fires, or were you talking about the actual danger of the bike on the road?
So they're in houses being charged rather than cars.
Thank you.
Which also mentioned to the road.
I would not argue with that. I would argue that they're dangerous.
Yeah, I would agree, but yeah.
Sorry, just on that as well, the additional dangers of people being encouraged to use electricity, etc. during the night.
Yeah.
So you have vehicles, etc. in the house, sometimes under the stairs, being charged during the night.
Yes, and then they can just park up. And, yeah. Okay. So it was Brian first, and then Anne.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think the registrars are getting away very lately today. And what I want to say about the settled setup is it's absolutely fantastic. Your staff are very caring. About a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I lost my mother-in-law who used their service, and it was absolutely fantastic. So just to say that message back to your staff,
Oh, well, thank you.
very sympathetic, very clear, and, you know, and they're actually very willing to come back and talk. And you've got different levels of bereavement, and, you know, I just can't see enough about the service. It was really good.
Oh, thank you, appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
If I could just add to that point, I mean, I think in the pre-meeting, we actually made that point. It was unlikely that that registrars would need any scrutiny, because I think the feedback as councillors that we all get is that it is a very good service, and I think it's also worth mentioning the importance to, well, it was mentioned in the presentation, but the importance to tourism that the weddings service brings. I know in my part of the county, it's a huge part of the underpinning of all the holiday accommodation and things like that. So it is really important.
Chair, the other point was that, you know, I've got to agree with Councillor Reid, you know, the fire service that we've got is absolutely fantastic and has been for over a year. So well done to you and your team. Congratulations or commiserations on your new role. But I'm sure you'll do a fantastic job. We're sitting in a scrutiny committee, but I'm mindful that you scrutinise yourselves more than what we scrutinise you. So that, you know, that's a well done. I wanted to come back to page 61, and if we go down on the left-hand side, item number 9, it says increase the use of social media platforms to promote key messages. How would you do that, above what you're doing now?
So it's really saying that we have increased it. So when we were inspected in 2018 by Her Majesty's Inspector, as it was at the time, there was a sense that we weren't as mature and as progressed as we could and should have been as a fire and rescue service. At that point, we then secured our own comms officer to work very closely with NCC corporate comms, and the level of how we communicate now through those social media platforms has raised significantly. We've got articles going out at the moment on a 4-week plan around electric vehicles, around charging electric vehicles, scooters, mobile phones, and it's just we've now got ourselves in a much stronger position across Snapchat, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. So our platform and the hits we get on it are delivering the key messages. One thing that really reflected the power of that was we had over 2,000 members of the public visited West Hartland Fire Station last Saturday for our open day, and the main communication mechanism for celebrating that we were having that was with social media. So it's now in place and it can grow, and the interface with NCC corporate comms is ever strengthening as well.
Okay. So the reason why I brought that up is, and I agree with all the platforms that you've touched on, but as I'm not savvy on platforms, but at the end of the day, I know there's a lot of local platforms. For example, in our town, you know, you've got an Ashington, the local news is strictly talks about Ashington. You've even got estates now, you know, the Fallowfield estate that I represent. They've got a Friends of Fallowfield. I was just wondering, sometimes if it's a local type issue, are these options that you may tie into that?
That would be excellent, maybe to pick that up with you on table about how you suggest we would start to identify where those key contacts would be.
Yeah.
We already have them, but.
Thank you. I've just made a note to look up your Snapchat account after this meeting. Councillor, would you?
Sorry, thank you very much. So to say, the coroner service, I would like to give a lot of credit because they do a very difficult job. But also to ask if you have more information on the work they do. I've actually done work with the coroner service on various things that have happened and the amount of detail and the work they have to do to establish whatever they're looking at on investigating. And I just would like to have more information about, all the things they do look at. And actually, you know, the working in partnership with the other people who work in partnership. So it's not just them, we work with a lot of other partners, and it'd be interesting to see the amount of work they do and who is involved, but also obviously all the amount of work and different things they do.
And does the coroner service do an annual report?
It do, yeah, and it's just, sorry, no, just go. It has just been recently reviewed, and actually fascinating reading.
Right.
There's so much information there, which
So
put it across really well.
as a starting point, could we circulate that
Yeah.
report? And then at the next meeting, we could have a bit of a quick discussion about whether we need any further scrutiny after we've all had a read.
Sorry, Chair.
Sorry.
The coroner gave a presentation to the Health and Wellbeing Screening.
Yeah.
It was just last week.
Okay.
Health and Wellbeing Screening received a presentation from the coroner last week. So I'm more than happy to circulate that presentation to members.
Okay.
Just want more information,
Yeah.
basically.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, so we'll circulate that. Thank you very much.
But can I pick on your point, Councillor Gallagher? It's social media is incredibly good for recruitment of staff as well, because we're reaching far outlying areas as well as urban areas, and it has really helped with recruitment, particularly retaining firefighters, because it shows the fantastic work, camaraderie, professionalism, great equipment, and everything that goes along with providing such a service. So,
Yeah. Thank you. That's been really interesting. And so I don't know whether you want to leave before the next item or.
We will, if that's okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Plenty to do.
Annual performance report.
Oh, yes, sorry. Are we all happy to note the contents of the annual performance report?
Yes.
Yeah.
And a howling error, Chair.
Yeah, thank you for that.
So I think so.
We can that in just.
Yeah, I'll be the one that would spot it.
Annual. I'll just come back. These are your slides. Thank you. Oh, yes, yes. Those really get rolled in. Yeah. Thank you. So, thank you very much for your patience in waiting through this. So this is actually a piece of scrutiny work, and it's Judith Murphy is going to present this now. It's a very specific thing that's a requirement of what used to be known as the local government ombudsman. Obviously, it sort of expanded its role recently by looks of things. But so perhaps you could just sort of introduce, I'm sure we've all read the report, but if you could just introduce the key findings and how they're being addressed.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So I'm the South East Area Manager for the development management side of planning. This has come about off a planning application that we received for a normal house extension, attached house in Morpeth. It was a bungalow, and they wanted, amongst other things, a dormer at the back of the house and a balcony to extend from that dormer. Because it was a householder application, the way we write the reports, officer goes out, does the site visit, assesses the application, and then writes a report. And the way we do the report, it's very light touch, and that's really because we have so many householder applications. We try and keep it as short as we can, without going into too much detail, and just try to keep it to the point, which we did on this application. It was assessed, it went through for approval. When the development started to be built, one of the neighbours, not immediately next door, but next door to that, so all but one, complained to say, what's going on with this balcony? If they can overlook into my garden, all my privacy's gone. And we try to explain that, you know, it's not that that wasn't assessed. It's just we don't go into all of the detail within the report. The way the report is written is that the officer does assess all the elements that we need to assess within a householder application. We just don't go into the full detail of it in the report. If there was an issue with it, we would highlight that, but if everything is okay, we've just kind of written it up to say, yes, it's all been assessed, everything's been considered, it's recommended for approval. The complainant wasn't happy with that, went through stage 1, stage 2 process with the council, eventually went to Ombudsman, and had a few conversations with the Ombudsman, and he came back more or less saying that he had no way of knowing whether we had assessed this balcony or not because we hadn't documented it in the report. And he recommended from that we pay this gentleman £300 this compensation so he could get some sort of screening on his garden, the boundary of his garden, because the Ombudsman did believe there was an overlooking issue and previously had been lost. And that we worked with the applicant, so the owner of the house that was being extended, to consider some sort of screening on the side that overlooked the garden. As it happened, although it wasn't on the application, they put screening up regardless, which the complainant said he was satisfied with. But the Ombudsman said that we do need to document more in our reports when we write them up, so it's clear what we have assessed. And we reported that we bring it to this committee to report that back. Off the back of what he has said, we have amended our procedure note for household planning applications and the way the reports are written to say that we haven't had any objections to the report and the application, and if we had, those would have been documented. But he has said we do need to document sort of each point. In this case, there was a garage with extension of the dormer and the balcony, and we just need to document each one to say there are no concerns, everything has been assessed. So we've amended our procedure note to reflect that, and we've changed how we do our reports now just to add that extra detailing. So if you want guilty that nothing's been missed, whatever the outcome, we can still demonstrate it has all been considered. Chair.
Thank you. So does anybody have any questions, Anne?
Great, thank you very much, and thank you for coming to this report. It's not an easy thing to do, and it's quite a simple actual planning. It's nothing of any, it hasn't got a lot of complex, it's not a complex application or anything like that. But it just shows that people have got a real concern that they can go that far down the line to the Ombudsman. I think what I'd like to say is the findings of the Ombudsman are quite clear in a way that I think we all probably feel that you're giving everything a light touch, basically, because you're understaffed. And the amount of planning applications that come in and the time you have and the actual enforcement that comes in as an impact of that sometimes. And I know that the amount of enforcement has gone up. And I'm not sure, it's a whole process together whether, somebody does, if you do enforce something, it's got to go to the legal department. And these ongoing whole picture, and should be actually, maybe we should be looking at it, because this is just a small thing. And actually, I give credit to the person who's actually gone down the route of going to the Ombudsman, because it takes a long time and you have to be very exact. I've got cases where I would have done it quite easy, except probably take me a week to put everything together. And then it would come back and the staff would have to do a response to the Ombudsman. It goes round and round. So this is just a small thing, but I think it could be part of the big picture about actually light touch. So I think maybe we could use that as a scrutiny to have a look at the performance of planning, including the enforcement and the availability of staff to undertake the amount of work that's coming through, because we do have performance indicators, which we have to reach. And I just think that would help give the staff the benefit that we actually have concerns and want to support them in delivering a really good planning service. So if anybody would support me,
I would support that. I think I mean, in terms of this specific case, obviously, I think it's encouraging that there is a process. If somebody feels like there's been, and what we've got here is a situation that has been effectively upheld by the Ombudsman. It's not the most egregious of issues, but for that person, it will be. Obviously, they felt strongly enough about it to take it all that way. The wider point you're making, though, is about one of having an update to scrutiny on general planning performance. And we've got, I think it's no secret that the recruitment has been difficult in planning and that, some of the areas of performance are better than others. We have a whole series of KPIs. Sometimes they give a really broad, accurate picture. Sometimes they mask individual problems, or they don't sort of expose individual problems. So I think that's a great idea. And I think if Sean can speak to the planning department, and it's been some time since there's been a presentation by planning to this committee. So, and it's an important service area that impacts, and that's actually it's one that I don't know about everybody else, but I, as a councillor, probably get as much contact about planning issues as I do about any other type of issues, apart from leaves falling off trees. And so yes, we'll add that to the programme.
Can I just say, now it says actually agreed action, that's my concept. Consider whether it has the staff to deliver adequate service and that staff have the support necessary to carry out their work. This should happen within 3 months of the date of our final decision. So it is expected this work and will take place. It's not on page 76, agreed action, which is B.
Oh, sorry, 66. Right, I was looking wrong. Yeah. So does that? Yeah. That's kind of covered in the. But what I think that's something that we basically need to incorporate. And I think the fact that we are dealing with that now and we're asking for the. I mean, I think it's up to the planning department is responding to the ombudsman's requirements, but we're overlaying that with asking for a report to come to scrutiny, and one of the considerations, one of the things reported on in that report will be staffing levels, budgets, presumably any recruitment or retention issues, and how they may be better addressed if that's possible. So yeah, I think that I mean, I'm sure you'll feed that back to the department, and Sean will go through his channels to incorporate that. And yes, and that so in terms of that point, in terms of the ombudsman's point about the staffing levels, has that been considered? Has it been?
Chair, yes, it has. We've had a few recruitment exercises over this year, these last few months. The difficulty we have is the adverts are going out and we're just not getting responses coming back to us. And there's some repeated reasons why that we're here and why that's happening, but it's the adverts have gone out. We just can't attract people.
There was a workforce report presented to Corporate Services Scrutiny on Monday, and one of the things that was considered in that was issues around recruitment. And Sarah Farrell, the head of HR, the HR director, was saying in some specific technical issues, technical areas, there were mechanisms that can be used to address those areas. So maybe that's something that needs to be picked up, and because I think there are things like extra payments can be made that don't, because local government by necessity is governed by pay scales, and you have to have that, otherwise it will be a free-for-all. But sometimes that is constricting, and it means that you can't actually achieve what you need to achieve. So that is being looked at. Yeah.
Can I just explain within enforcement? With enforcement, actually, they take action. You have to do it through the legal department, and I think we need to address the whole thing. So we want to know how long it takes for the legal department to act on that enforcement notice that was given by the planning department or the enforcement officer. So it's just a whole stream.
This is for the board of scrutiny. Yes.
The legal department who actually issue the enforcement notice.
Yeah.
So that is just takes, because if the enforcement department are doing their work, it means that actually the legal department have to actually do their work too.
Yes, so this is not specifically talking about this case. This is specifically for the broader piece of scrutiny work is around planning, development management, but also enforcement as well. So it would be a wide piece of scrutiny. Great. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Brian.
Thank you, Chair. As the Chair of Planning, I welcome this report specifically because the more information we can deliver out there, the less complaints we should in theory get. So for it to be more information to be delivered there in a timely way, that's really good. I've got to pick up one point that I made before, and it's on page 69, and it actually comes under the customer consideration. And, you know, this person has been committed into making good their points. And what we've got to be very mindful of is that people fall into the first and second and third hurdle, and they don't follow it all the way through, but are very, very discontented. So the reality is this one individual has ticked all the boxes, but there are a lot of people that really just give up and just say, well, I'm just going to have to accept it. So maybe that's something to review and look at. And again, coming back, you know, the planning performance. I, as chair of planning, I know what pressures you're under staff, you're overworked, and you do a fantastic job, so well done on that. But any failures or any targets that aren't met aren't necessarily always yours in the departments.
No.
And we're talking about the legal and the enforcement. So the reality is, if you're going to have a scrutiny report, you make sure those guys there are there at the same time. And what I've been very concerned about since being chair is the change, well, since being involved with this council, retrospective planning. So sometimes you'll get a planning application that will come through that will not adhere to that original plan. And that again triggers another set of work for you, the department, the enforcement and the legal teams, which, you know, and the legal teams are looking at money, enforcement are looking at their bit, the planning are looking at their bit. So it's really a vicious circle.
Yeah.
But coming back to, you know, yes, that, I believe that, you know, the staffing levels have to be reviewed and asked why. We kind of know unofficially why people are leaving. But we're getting new staff in, and sometimes they're university graduates, and they're not stepping into that role as hitting the ground running. They need to be retrained, they need to understand the areas, they need to how to interact with those other departments away from planning. So all of that is a structure that slows the processes down. So we keep saying the planning department, I think it's everything around planning. So, you know, say it again, well done, because I know exactly how it's going.
Thank you.
Great, okay, well, I think that we've sort of covered that in terms of the broader issues. Obviously, this item here is, we're going to bring something to the scrutiny committee. This item here is about this specific case, Jeff.
And that's my specific questions.
Yeah, sure.
Presumably this was a delegated decision.
Yes, it was.
So, how many of these have you seen in your career, Julie?
You mean ombudsman cases or?
Well, it's this kind of level. I mean, it's not common, is it?
Do you mean as in the complaints?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, actually, what I mean is somebody coming, the ombudsman coming back saying,
oh no.
you know,
no,
give
I
this
mean,
guy 300 quid.
This one, I mean, with the ombudsman, to be honest, I think there's maybe one or two this year have been found at fault, this being one of them.
And how many planning applications have been dealt with this year?
Oh, well, we're up to about 3,500 now. I know.
Okay, so this is a, you know.
Fairly rare occurrence, isn't it? Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
It's not a thing, you know, I've never seen you sit here and have to field questions about this sort of thing, so.
The ombudsman's chairs, obviously you'll know that they're not really assessing the outcome, they're assessing the process.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
You know, quite a lot of them come back saying they're not investigating because from what they've been told, it's a grievance about the decisions that they've made, so not about the process. So a lot of times don't investigate, or they come back and say we're not at fault because we've done everything properly, albeit the complainant isn't happy with the outcome.
And you can't appeal a positive decision. If planning permission is granted, you can only sort of.
No third party can, I mean,
No.
the applicant could, that's never happened.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're traveling down a very narrow path here.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm sorry that somebody made a mistake, and if you've looked at it and think, well, this is the way to fix it, is just by being more specific. Are you going to be still using pre-written paragraphs, or are you going to be?
Yeah, Chair, they're not pre-written, we just know the kind of city, because you've got to adapt it to each.
Yeah.
So, there's some kind of, they'll sort of say the same kind of thing,
Yeah.
we just adapt it to that case, but we have started adding in now, if we've received objections, we put bullet points of what they are and address them separately, like individually, not as part of the report. And also it's just a case, in this case, it would be a case of saying the garage, the dormer and the balcony have all been assessed against the policies XYZ. There is no issue or concerns.
Yeah. So really, this is just about, it was assessed to be fine, but because the process wasn't right. Mr. X was able to say, but it, so if the documentation that you say is now in place, had been in place when this happened, do you think the case would have been dismissed?
I think it would have done, Chair, because it would have shown that we had considered adding.
And I think it was reflected in the size of the reward is £300, not £30,000. It's, yeah.
So I mean, that's kind of really all you can say about this is, well, the other was, whose budget is that £300 coming out of? And is this the proper place for this to have come rather than the corporate services?
It's a requirement of the ombudsman that it came here.
To this particular
Yes,
school?
yeah, apparently.
Okay.
Yeah, so the ombudsman chose this committee.
Right.
Must have heard about the former chair.
So, do you know which budget this is coming out of?
I don't, I know, we just asked our finance people to sort this £300 out, so I'm not sure.
Pencil sharp.
It's been out of.
Well, so, yeah, the only reason I say that is because, yes, you fixed it, that's fine. But this £300, which, you know, is a small amount in the grand scheme of things, 300 quid to any of us would be very welcome, I'm sure. But, you know, if we just passed it to finance and they paid it, there's kind of no, there's no financial consequence for the department or the section. I'm not for 1 minute suggesting that the person who passed it should be able to pay the £300, by the way. But it's just, the ombudsman has done this to compensate the guy and to teach us a lesson.
Yeah,
And I just wonder, well, we've changed, but that's fine.
Changed the process.
But a penalty, do you see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, but I think the point is because it's a relatively small amount. The point has been made, the process has been looked at, the process has been changed. And it's come to the committee and there's been public scrutiny of it. So I think that job done really, isn't it? It's, yeah.
Can I just answer? I mean, you could actually add what Jeff's saying on a much bigger front, are those that go to appeal and the council has cost against them.
Yeah.
And that is a lot of money in some cases.
But could we leave that until the?
Yeah, but can I just say you might want to put that in, but also cost of judicial reviews and all the other things that come with that. And I don't know what all the other legal processes are, but it all comes at a cost, as you say. The minimum is 300 here, but the others would be a lot more.
Yes. Yeah, and we can cover that when we get a proper.
But the only trouble with, I'm going to try and put the lid back on the can of worms. I mean, if for 1 minute we as in planning committees started to think, well, I'd better vote that way because otherwise the council's going to get £200,000 bill if it goes to appeal.
Right.
You know, if councillors start thinking, well, they aren't going to get a portion of that, if I'm not careful, then the whole system will grind to a halt and it'll become about money rather than
Why
what
we
we
get
think is right.
reminded that we must make decisions based on planning,
Yeah.
considerations rather than just.
But you can see how this can become a slippery slope. So,
Okay,
you know, well done for listening to what was said. Well done for changing the procedures. And I guess the mark of this will be that we never get anything like this again.
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Nick?
Thanks. The Ombudsman said that the council brought in a fail-safe check to make sure that the documents are uploaded. But it did that well over a year ago, and that upload certification failed. So presumably that fail-safe check was brought in as a result of this particular complaint.
Chair, no, it wasn't actually. It had been brought in before that. We realised again through not necessarily a mistake. The system was allowing us very easily to issue a decision on when it shouldn't be issued. There was nothing in the system that prevented us from doing it. The case in hand was the screen can open 4 or 5 cases at the same time, and you can be jumping between cases. In this particular case, I think that somebody had been interrupted and they'd gone back into the wrong case and issued the decision on that one when they were working on another one. And we're saying that there's no way of knowing, of stopping that really. We need some sort of check in place. So we introduced where the officer report must be uploaded onto the system. So when our central registry team issue decisions, they look to see that officer report is there. And if they don't, they will come back to us and say, this report isn't there. Is this really ready to go? And then we can make that double check. But it's also when the case officer writes their report, it is then signed off by the more senior officer. So that is a check for them to do now as well, to make sure that this officer report is already in there and they won't sign it off unless it is. And then the double check is once it goes through with a decision to be issued, if the signing off officer has missed it also, the central registry team should pick it up. And I can honestly say since then, since you brought that in, it's never happened again. We've never issued a decision in error.
Okay, so additional fail-safe checks have been introduced as a result of this complaint, and they seem to have worked really well.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah, we really have.
Thanks.
Good to see.
Thanks. Can I also ask about the timing of this coming to scrutiny? The Ombudsman requested that this report came to scrutiny within a month of him or her informing the council that the remedy is satisfied. Are you able to tell me when they did that, and has this report come to scrutiny within a month of that?
It has. Sorry, I haven't got the actual date. I'd sent it over to send something back to the Ombudsman to say we'd done what he'd asked us to do, and it was coming to this committee and the procedure note update, and he came back confirming he was happy with that. I don't have the exact date, but I could say, if you wanted to see the email, I could send that to you, but he has responded to say he's happy with that.
Great, brilliant, thank you.
Great. Well, thank you very much.
Okay,
It's been very helpful.
thank you.
Thank you. Oh, and yes, sorry. So we've got recommendations 1 to 4. Are we all happy with those recommendations? I don't propose to read them out individually.
Okay, first,
Yeah. Anybody happy to second them?
No.
Yeah. Thank you.
Do we send that recommendation to the Ombudsman? Yes, I think the intention would be to report back to the Ombudsman now anyway, to say that we've been and this is what's happened.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is the monitoring report. We've had quite a lot of discussion and written quite a long list of things to add to the programme anyway, so I don't propose to go through those again. But if there's anything Sean wants to add, or Mark wants to say something.
Other than just to confirm, and as apparent from the minutes as well, there were a number of issues from both the presentations asking to bring forward onto the work programme that they came to earlier. That list was circulated to all officers and portfolio holders. The chair and vice chair was copied in, saying that these need to be added to the work programme, but we don't want them all straight away. In fact, I think the point was made that during those presentations, that it might take some time for all of them to filter through. But I can confirm that the Fix My Street will come to the next meeting. So that the Fix My Street.
Well, Fix My Street, sorry. That's what it said.
And so obviously that's the first out of this, but as you appreciate, we're going to add to that list again after the meeting.
That's great. It's also probably worth reporting that we've had some contact from Councillor Richard Dodd about sort of related to sort of broadband and telephone lines and trees and ash dieback. So we've had a bit of a discussion about that in terms of how we, and I think what we'll probably do is combine some consideration of that when we get the report on broadband. It's about resilience, it's about making sure that we have resilience to telephone networks and broadband and things like that. But we also want to look at rollout of broadband and fibre and stuff. So that will just be sort of fed in at that point. There's also be something circulated to all members of this committee that was a response to the, I wasn't on the committee then, but the response to the Storm Arwen. I think Openreach did respond later, and we've just found that response, so that will be circulated, and everybody can take a look at that.
Can I just ask that meeting? I did ask the lady, I can't remember what she called her. Yeah, to about getting contact details of all councillors and the best way to contact them during storms like that. And she said she would write it out to everybody. Well, she hasn't, as far as I know. I've never had a thing saying what my contact details, because basically what she was saying, you can get it on your internet, but I can't. And so it was actually, my contact details were actually on a landline. That's the only way you can contact me. And so it was that important conversation that we were going to have about how people can be contacted. So we might need to get that done because it's part of the,
Yeah, I've got a meeting soon with Helen to discuss rural communications. So I'll bring that up there.
Will you? Because it's important. There's no point in sending things when I can't get them. And there'll be other members the same, I presume.
Right. And Mark, did you have something else to raise?
Yeah, it was a couple of points that potentially we do need to look at. We normally get the fleet update, which is quite a bland update on what we're doing. I've recently found a problem with fleet where our 4 gully wagons, which we're very pleased to receive, one was taken out of service and returned to manufacturer for modification works. And we didn't hear from that manufacturer for 14 weeks. So that gully wagon's been out of service for 14 weeks, and I personally don't think that's acceptable. And I think going forward in fleet, we need to look at, was this a fault of our designing of the gully wagon, so it's fleet failed us, or because of the procurement processes that we sometimes have to follow, do we have a very poor relationship with the manufacturer? Because I know if one of my works vehicles was out of action for longer than probably a day, I'd be on the phone asking what's happening, when's the parts coming, and I think that maybe procurement is failing us because there's such a distance now between the authority and the manufacturer. We don't have that relationship. And also with fleet, if the North team, the West team, or the South team have to employ a contractor, hire in a vehicle, that comes out of their pocket. Fleet doesn't pay for that.
So do we want to do something on specifically about fleet, or do we want to do something more generically about I don't want to get into potholes and stuff like that, but something more generic about gully maintenance and road sweeping, the things that it's almost like the stuff that stops the need for as much work on potholes to happen, if you know what I mean.
I think it's a part of all
preventative maintenance
on the highway side. There seems to be no fallback.
I mean, you're talking about it's ditching, it's not just,
So there's sort of two different things going on here. There's a question about making sure everyone has the right equipment, but there's also a question of making sure that the stuff that damages our roads gets adequately dealt with, so that we have to spend less money on fixing potholes by doing better drainage, better gully sucking, better ditching, better road sweeping or whatever.
Yeah, the committee did used to receive seasonal maintenance reports.
Yeah.
There was one pre-summer and one pre-winter. But they moved across to look their committees as they are now, because the presentations could be more locally given. I'm assuming that those presentations are still happening.
We get regular
And
presentations.
one of the things that the chairs group asked us not to do was duplicate what the local area council are doing. So it's not, I mean, obviously I don't go to the local area committee, so I don't, you know, say that.
What? Yeah.
It's up to you.
Well, maybe we could work on trying, and maybe we could have a discussion with Paul. Maybe you and I and Mark could have a discussion with Paul. And just have a bit of a chat, work, because to me, it's not, what we don't want to do is get into a situation where we're going around the county and all of us are saying, well, I've got a guy in Corbridge that needs fixing, or, but what we are looking at is there an opportunity by better procurement, by more machines, by better machines or whatever, to actually reduce, to improve the service, reduce the need, and actually get better performance. So when we do report to local area councils about the road between Ridingmill and Prudhoe or whatever, you don't need to talk about it because it's kept clear, the roads are swept and the gullies are empty.
Well, also, we until this year, have an annual fleet report. The report was more or less the same thing every year. It was fine.
It just tells you what kit people are buying.
Exactly. And so as part of the new way of working, it was felt that reports that you were routinely receiving weren't telling you anything new from the previous year. Everything was fine. We should put those to one side. But if members thought that there were issues, to reinstate that report. And if you think that perhaps we're asking Paul to bring that report to you now,
I think that's what I meant by a pretty bland report. It was only before 4 gully wagons, 3 snowplow. We didn't learn anything out of that. My concern is how fleet operates.
Yes.
And I think instead of a list of what we've purchased, this is about the process. And is the process fit for purpose, as in our local guys and girls doing the work?
So
Does it work for them? More about the procurement and the management of our fleet rather than just what we've purchased.
Yeah, okay. Brian? And then Anne. Sorry, Anne, and then Brian, and then
Go
we'll.
back, 'cause I knew getting a big picture, but
Yeah.
the original, a while ago, about, I don't know, 2016, something, we put together a booklet, and Chris Westby has it, and he's trying to take it forward, which shows the landowners' as far as responsibilities. So you're talking about the road, but what goes onto the road?
Yeah.
So for instance, trees and everything else, all the whole thing, the responsibility of a landowner, it could be a gardener, it could be just whatever. It's your responsibility of managing water or whatever you have onto the highway or the pavement or whatever. And that booklet was there because, I mean, I have farmers, for instance, who change the plough on their land and cause landslides.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of things that actually go into highways. So you could take a big picture about actually, you could say, you know, drainage, and then also the drainage beside the roadside, that would drive, but the ditching, but everything is needed, including the gully cleaner and other machinery that is required or work to keep and maintain our roads, which fit for purpose, which could go into the TAMP actually, because the TAMP will be looking at that. So that's the whole thing. And your thing is very important, as is the road sweeper that comes in, which is the cleansing thing. So you could bring it in there, but it's just part of the big picture. That makes sense.
If you can get that report released, you're a better councillor than I am, because I've requested it at every committee I've been to on all levels since Storm Marwen, about getting what is land ownership responsibilities with regards to trees,
we've still got trees lying on verges which have not been cleared up. And yet I cannot get that information released into the public. And that, you know, if landowners don't realise what the responsibilities is, what can be done.
Okay, can I suggest that you leave it with us? I think we've got a pretty good understanding of what the issues are. And can I suggest that Sean, Mark and I have a meeting with Paul and just discuss it and find a way to have it addressed and bring it here. If you just leave it with us, we'll circulate a suggestion for comment before we agree it. I think we understand that this is an issue that is important to all councillors, not just the people sitting around this table. And it's something that we feel we can sort of have some influence on. So we'll do that and we'll report back to you. Is that okay?
Chair,
Yeah.
I agree with everything you said in the direction you're going on, but just to bring up Mark's point, gully cleaners were brought to the scrutiny committee, and we were very happy that they had 4 brand new ones. But we had 4 to 5 capable older ones, and they couldn't wait to get shot of them. So the reality was, we're so far behind with our gully cleaning. My request was you keep them and you keep them in service, reduce the number of gullies, well, enhance the number of gullies that will be cleaned and reduce the number of complaints. But all I did was get shot of them. So the reality is it's coming back to the green goddesses, going back to them days. We should get rid of old equipment just because we've got new.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeff.
And Mark's got one more point and then we'll close the meeting. Oh, sorry, Nick's got one more point as well. And then we'll close the meeting.
With regards, you know, in our work, the fear of crime and crime, I've been alerted by a local police officer that potential changes of policing is going to be happening again by Police Crime Commissioner, where response officers aren't going to be based in all stations. They're going to be more centralised. Like I said, response officers were moved out of Berwick and placed in Alnwick. I think this is going to really increase the potential fear of crime and the response that we're going to get. And I think that if that does happen, that needs to come to this committee, and they should be scrutinised. And that I have written to the Police and Crime Commissioner and the Chief of Police, and echoed my, I think, lack of understanding of how to police rural areas in the county of Northumberland. I think that if that goes ahead, I think they should come in front of this committee and answer those questions.
So just being devil's advocate on this, the situation is very different in different areas, and I have heard similar things in the sort of West Tynedale area. But you know, there's different situations in our major towns to our rural areas. I'm just worried that what we end up with is something that tries to fix all problems. Would this not be better trying to get the police to come to a local area council in the first instance to report?
They used to, and again, I need to talk to my colleagues in the Democratic Service to see if they still do.
Yeah, they
don't, yes, they still do.
very occasionally. Well, we've had
annually, I think they were at Tynedale about March.
we've had the police and crime commissioner as well.
And certainly Leslie Little is contacting the officers responsible for the Castle Morpeth area. Obviously, I'm not doing that yet because we only just had them in March, so we'll probably programming that in future. I'm sure the other.
If our role is to scrutinise decisions that will change crime, community safety and fear of crime, that's not a local area council issue, because we'll get told off by the local officers that everything's hunky-dory and how great they are. This is about scrutiny of decisions of the chief of police.
So we're talking about
police and crime
distribution of resources across the county. Yeah, well, that's the question.
I've written to them and I'm waiting for a response. I just wanted to make you aware that that would be the angle I'll be going at.
Yeah.
If that, you know, that is put into place.
Yeah, no, okay.
When you get the response,
we'll have a discussion.
Yeah, that's with this group. Yeah.
Good. And Nick.
Thank you.
Last but not least.
Just briefly going back to the storm modelling review. It's been quite a while since Helen Hines came to this committee. And when she last dated, she gave us an update on a very small number of the recommendations from our review. just left me keen to hear what progress was being made on the other recommendations. Is it perhaps time we invite her back to give us an update on progress?
Yeah, and as the chair's just saying, we've just described the response from Overreach, and my intention is to circulate that to all members, plus Councillor Dodd, who was on the committee last year, and ask for your feedback on that response. And then as part of a sort of a wider look at the issues that the chair's already raised, such as broadband, flash dieback, issues around storm arming, whether or not there are gaps to be filled. It may well be an number two. But this early stage is, I'll send you the response, get your feedback. If there are issues that you want to raise, we'll bank those. Also, got Chris Thompson about the broadband issues, and perhaps tie the storm arming update into that as well. That might be the way forward. And I think looking at the programming, yeah, and the size of the task, that would be a standalone chair.
Yeah, well, thank you. Right, well, I think that ends the meeting. Thank you very much, everybody.